George, you've already done a Godzilla movie.
Good evening, everybody. This is John Marola from Keepin It Real Section 5 Football. And yes, our season is over, but no, we're still hard at work. And tonight's episode is going to be a round table type of thing. We have some things that, we've noticed throughout the season, maybe all our years of coaching. This is not going to be just a grumpy session. There's going to be positives, and there's going to be some things that, honestly, in my thinking, is I just don't even know, and we'll get into it. But first, I got to introduce our guys. We got all four of them here tonight, which is amazing. On my far, far, far right, we have Section 5 football coach, Coach George Giordano. George?
Thank you, Johnny, for having me back with these other young men here. It's a true honor.
Thank you. And to my right, Section 5 Hall of Fame coach from East High, Paul Briganti. Paul?
Thank you, John and George and Dave. Welcome. We look forward to tonight's discussions.
Yes. And the man next to me, Section 5 Hall of Fame football and baseball coach from Fairport High School, Dave Lanning. Coach?
John, thanks. Gentlemen, let's get it done.
Wow. We're serious tonight. Well, like I said, what we're going to do a little bit tonight is, our season's over, Section 5, and, I was doing this earlier. Between our, all four of us, we have over 150 years of coaching experience in Rochester. And we've seen Section 5 football, Monroe County football, the city football, back in the 80s till now. And, there's some things out there that, I like, but there's also some things out there that I just have to question. And I already told my other three co-hosts over here that if I say something negative, I'm going to try to give you, I'm going to try to say, hey, is there something I can do to help? I'm just not going to be the one, complaining. You know what I'm saying? I like to be the person, if I'm going to say something, I want to see if I can help with the situation, or at least present it. Anybody want to start first?
Well, I'll throw a few things out there.
Go ahead.
To start, I want to congratulate our sectional champions once again, and of course Brighton and Aquinas went on to the state semifinals.
Yep.
And Pembroke also. So those three programs really went the furthest this year.
Yep.
And in the meanwhile, since those games were played, I believe the Eddie Meath All-Star game, which is something we might want to talk about, was played, where our seniors get together and for a great cause, for the Children's Hospital. And congratulations to all those seniors that were selected to play in that game, which was played, I understand, under some really tough weather conditions.
Yeah.
And another year of all-star football. So congratulations to all those folks that were involved at the high school level.
Yes.
Over the last week and a half.
Yep.
Somewhere in there. So.
And I had the opportunity yesterday to go to the National Football Foundation, the brunch, the awards, and it was just fantastic. There was over, I think, $8,000 of scholarship money that went to Section 5 boys football, flag football, cheerleading. And when you see some of the kids' resumes that received the awards, not only were they outstanding athletes on the field, they had a grade point average, 98.6, high SAT scores. They had lists of community service things that they were doing, and that was something really, really positive. And it is right now that awards, it was a brunch. They had over 350 people there.
Wow.
And it's right now the biggest football activity we have in Section 5 as far as an awards night.
That's awesome.
And there was actually a lot of our players of the week that made it in the Keepin It Real Section 5
That's
football.
what you're saying.
Received top awards out of that. And so, kudos to those young men. And we spotted them, and we could tell just from our interviews with them what quality people they were.
Yes. Going back to our Player of the Week interviews, I would tell you, all those young men that we had, first of all, they're just great young men. You can just tell being with them for a couple minutes, 5-10 minutes before we went on air, that they're great young men, and they have a focus on what they want to do in life and everything. And I just commend all of them as far as what's going on now after football. I know some of them are going to go to college to continue playing, plus get their education. But I also know a couple that they're all done playing, football, organized football.
And the other things I wanted to mention about yesterday's banquet, they did mention at a moment's silence for Dave Neiman,
Nice.
Larry Minch. They opened the floor for any town that someone connected with football programs may have passed in the year, and people came forward with those names, and but it was just a great day, and this organization, the president of the organization is Archie Manning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a big.
It is pretty big.
Paul, can you name some of the people that are involved with that? Because I know from past experiences, whether it was just at our high school or through Section 5, that these events don't get done on their own. So
Well,
I'm sure there's a great committee
Yeah,
of people that were
and
Section
you would
5
know
names.
a lot of the names. Wade Bianco is the president of
Former
this
Miranda Quake
chapter.
coach, yeah.
But there are area coaches, Dave Marine,
Yep.
that coaches both the Wayne boys and Hilton girls. Team is on the committee. Danny Bates
Okay.
over there. John Micah,
Okay.
who was, in fact, one of the coaches award went to Mike Foster, and yesterday, and Bill Scharr accepted the award
Nice.
on Mike's behalf. Steve DeFranco received the officials award, and that these people have put a career into Section 5. And it was great because the Section 5 officials were there in support of Steve, who actually lives in Florida and comes up 3 months and officiates. And in fact, he was telling us, and you know a little bit about this game, Steve DeFranco officiated the CBA Syracuse, CBA
Oh, really?
Albany, the AA championship game
Yeah.
on this past weekend.
Yep.
Big honor for Steve.
That.
Great.
So,
He's a good,
so
good
yeah, there
official.
was some, great awards winners, and very, very supportive.
That's awesome.
Where was that function held?
It was at the RIT conference and in where we've done a lot of things through Section 5 over the years.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it was at. But and there's a lot of local groups that sponsor, and get involved with that. And it's a good thing, and that's one of the positives we have going right now in Section 5.
Okay. Like we were talking about, there's some things that we can start now a little bit as far as the one thing that really still in my mind that just really gets to me is the Eddie Meath game. We found out the day after,
Well, we knew it was going to be played.
but we didn't
thought,
know when.
and then we found out afterwards that it had been played.
And, those are things, this is what we're all about. This is what our station, our channel, Paul always says it, we're here to give information out. We never heard about anything. And that has to be communicated. And I'm going to reach out to Scott Barker and what we talked about earlier. This is not going to be just like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Ba-da-ba-da. You know what? I want to say to Scott, what can I do? What could, as far as promoting the Eddie Meath game?
As far as talking to people yesterday about that, I brought up that question. And, if you remember that game used to be played in the summer. And then eventually they stopped. They had I think it was a COVID year that stopped it. And then maybe the last 3 or 4 now they've played. And now they're saying they're playing it the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And I don't know if they're going to, continue using that as their traditional date of the game.
See, the other thing I don't understand about the Eddie Meath game being changed. First of all, back before they had all this stuff going on with kids going to college and all that, the game was played like the first week of June, I think, or maybe it was like even July.
No, they kept moving it.
Yeah,
closer to
around
the end of
the
school
springtime,
year.
but yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it was changed from the spring to the fall, and my I did hear a little bit of something about, well, in the springtime you got kids that are involved in spring sports. Well, in the wintertime you got kids that are involved in winter sports. So that really, from what I've heard, I don't understand again what that's all about and why it was, and it's on a Tuesday night. I mean, I remember for years a Saturday night up at the U of R. Maybe they can't get the U of R now. Maybe,
I believe the game was played at the University
Oh,
of
it was,
Rochester.
yeah.
The one thing that I guess is, as far as I'm concerned, is a bit negative is the fact that we had athletes that were not able to play because their season was continued. Brighton, Aquinas, and Pembroke
yeah.
all had athletes that probably would have played in the game had their team not moved on so far into
They were on the
season.
rosters.
They were on the roster, but
couldn't play.
I remember it being a big thrill. In fact, I just ran into an older fella who played for us back in the day who mentioned the Eddie Meath game is one of the highlights of his career, and that it was such a great honor for him to play and to be in practice with the other guys that he'd been banging around with or against for 4 years. Just that fact that there's not an opportunity for those athletes to play in the game and to play one more game. And I think that if you moved it back to, I don't know, usually Memorial Day is
Yes,
end of most sports
Yep,
seasons.
yep.
Most teams are done by then. So maybe a week or two after that, seniors don't really worry too much about their finals. You grab your gear and you go out and you practice for 3 or 4 nights, and it's a much easier night on the parents, the fans. We talked about in the past, I mean, we all coached in that game at one point. And I remember coming out at halftime, and there was a huge band from Dansville playing in there, and the cheerleaders were jumping around, and the parents from those two groups were there. And I'm not sure if that's actually the case anymore. In fact, I was going through some stuff in the attic yesterday, and I came across a lot of those programs, and it was kind of nice to have that. And I'm not sure if it's feasible logistically to put programs together and to do the banquet and to go to the hospital and all the things that we took a lot of pride in. You just can't possibly do that as you're getting ready for sectionals and regionals, et cetera, et cetera. So you jam yourself up by putting it in at that time of year, and a lot of things fall by the wayside.
And for a lot of us that we remember, originally the game was televised.
The first, I think, 5 years.
Yeah, Eddie Meath, you had you'd be able to purchase tickets at Tops, Wegmans for the game, and they practiced for a couple of weeks.
2 weeks, I remember us
But,
practicing.
but
Yeah.
during,
Not every night, but 2 weeks.
during that time, like you said, there was a banquet. They had the hospital visit that Timmy Hill would organize,
Yes.
and that was always a big event. I remember the ice cream socials and things, taking the athletes up to see the kids in the hospital, and so there was a lot of really good things, and I think over time, I think when you had scheduled the game. Then kids who had college commitments were leaving early and bowing out of the game, and they kept trying to move it closer to the end of the school year so they would have better participation of kids who could play.
I don't know how many kids we lost to, colleges, truthfully. And to me, this should be a standalone event, not stuck into the middle of the season, the end of the season.
Yeah.
It should be a standalone, promoted, and all the things that used to be done could still be done.
No, one of the other suggestions that one of the coaches made yesterday about that game was to have it as a Section 5 versus Section 6 type All-Star game. And you've seen other states. Johnny, I know you've been to the Big 33,
Big 33.
back in the day.
Yep.
We had that New York, New Jersey.
Been to that,
Looking at it as a section versus section All-Star.
Well, I coached in the first New York, New Jersey game, and that was a big deal. On the other hand, if you do that, now you limit the number of kids from Section 5 that can play. In an Eddie Meath game, you have an East-West squad. You've got
More kids,
60,
right,
70
right.
kids playing. If you go to a one-game affair, 5 versus 6, now you're limiting it half.
I don't know if anybody else in the state is playing like our Eddie Meath game.
I think Buffalo plays a East-West type of thing, and I believe that's in the spring.
I also want to add the fact that at that time, again, I'm a big proponent of moving it back to June. At that time, I spent a lot of time with the Section 5 recruiting night, and what I would do is I would make sure that I interviewed all the kids as they came to the first week of practice, first couple of days of practice. Paul, where are you going to college? I'm going to Hobart. Dave, where are you going to college? I'm going to Alfred. Johnny, where are you going? Well, I haven't got any plans yet. So I took those names down, and I would send them to my contacts for college recruiting night, and almost 10 or 12, Division III, Division II coaches that came up for the game and made one last pitch to an uncommitted kid. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if doing it now with those coaches still playing in their season are going to make the effort to come and see a high school all-star game in November. So plus, that's my big concern, is to try to get that back into the summer where we can get those kids. And to mention the numbers again, too, I do know that at one time it was very, very selective. I mean, if you had 2 kids in the all-star game, or 3, you were at the very top of the rung. Now, you suggest, because by position, I might have a lineman who isn't super, but someone bows out, he's ready to go. Yeah. And there's enough minutes in the game to get everybody some time.
Yes. Some other things involved with that game, the Eddie Meath game, like Dave was saying, I've been down to the Big 33 game, and you can't go to a bigger all-star game than that. I mean, there hasn't been one Super Bowl played that there's been at least one kid that's played in the Big 33 game. So you go from Super Bowl I to the Super Bowl now, there's always been one kid. Mm-hmm. So they do a lot of things that I really like. They make it offensive friendly. People want to see, it's an all-star game. They want to see offense score. I remember the one year, was it Kevin Nope? One year played the Eddie Meath game, and he kicked a field goal, and the West won 3-0.
I think there was.
I think it
I
was.
don't know if it was Kevin Nope, but I think it was a kicker from
It was
Olympia, and I think
3-0.
Dave Lanning might have been the coach from the East squad that night, and he threw his hat down in disgust. If I'm not mistaken, was that you, Dave?
You are mistaken, George.
Yeah.
I never wore a hat.
There you go. You're right.
He probably never lost to the All-Star game. Just ask him. Right?
Going back to the New York, New Jersey game, the Governor's Cup, it was called at the time. There were rules for the defense. They could only line up in a certain formation,
no
coverages, no blitzes.
There was a guy on the sideline at the Big 33 when they had the ball, say Pennsylvania had the ball, there was a guy on the sideline. You have to throw the ball before every third play. So, there's no blitzing, there's no slant. It's all straight man-to-man, safety free. That's all you can play. Offensive friendly. The people are there, they want to see scoring.
Or play 11 on 8, too, or something like that.
Just put someone in a penalty box.
And back then, I mean, some of the guys that I seen play in that game, Chad Henning, Orlando Pace. I mean, there are some big
Hall
time
of Famers.
Yeah, big time guys.
Originally, too, when we first started and it was in its infancy, I remember we started it as almost like a pre-college game, and they played by some college rules with some modifications. The periods were 15 minutes. And the kids were like, some kids were getting hurt at the end of the game, and finally Dick Cerrone, who was in charge at the time, said, listen, we're going to try to gear this back, even though we have a lot of kids to get in the game. That extra 15 minutes or 12 minutes, I guess, is it was a lot. And I remember David Walker getting hurt late in the game, and as he was on his way to Syracuse.
Really?
And got banged up a little bit, so.
You know, from talking to people on the New York State, and to your point, Dave, how we used to have a New York, New Jersey, there's some talk again now to try to get a New York, Connecticut All-Star game. You know, they had a lot of problems with the New York, New Jersey. You got a lot of different factions, a lot of different want this sponsorships and whatever, and they just
there was definitely headbutting
could never
between New York and New Jersey officials.
You know, it didn't look like they were having much success working it out, but they are. I think they're in the works of trying to get something with New York and Connecticut.
Now, the one year, just to go back a little bit, and then myself and Bob Ebert, some years back, we flew down to Tennessee, to Knoxville. We watched the Florida, Georgia All-Star game, high school All-Star game, and right after that was the South Carolina, North Carolina All-Star game. Wow. So they played 2 All-Star games at the University of Tennessee, and I never seen so many Division I kids in my life on one field. I mean, it was just packed with kids. So anyways, back to this. I would really like to see it go back to where it was in June. The weather, first of all, is going to be better. It's got a better shot to being better. You know, and as far as getting kids to play, again, if there's anything that I can do, like I said, I'm going to talk. I talked to Scott a couple weeks ago when I was up at Brockport State, and I invited him, and he said, yes, we're going to make plans. We're going to have him on as a guest when we get into our second season. And, you know, maybe, you know, we'll talk a little bit about that as far as the Eddie Meath game. I just enjoyed it so much. All of us enjoyed it. I think that's why we were so taken back a little bit about not even knowing the game was being played. I mean, we used to look forward to that. I mean, that was something that was marked on the calendar.
It was actually quite an honor to be coach.
Yes.
To coach it. To be asked.
Would buy
the
to
phone
be on
call.
the
Yeah, like
yes.
just wait by your phone, you know. But it was always a lot of fun and just so much going on. I think it's sectional time to try to jam it in, like to Dave's point.
Yeah. And like you said, you got kids that are playing in like Aquinas and Pembroke and Brighton. You got kids out of those teams. You could probably take, what I'm not even thinking, 4 kids from each team.
Easy.
You know what I'm saying? So there's another 12 kids that you can add that are probably pretty premier, you know, football players. Yeah. You know, so that now again, we're going to talk about different things. And one thing I do want to, you know, it's not all going to be, you know, complaining or whatever you want to think. There are some things that went on this past year I did like, and that was the beginning of the season with their non-league games. I want to go back and say congratulations again to teams like East High, opened up with CBA. UPrep, they opened up with St. Anthony's. Canandaigua, they went up to the Carrier Dome.
And Victor played in the
And
Carrier
Victor
Dome.
played up there, too. So I really like that.
McQuaid played
Lancaster.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I really like that, and that's something that Section 5 did that, you know, I tip my hat to. That's, you know, it's just making our area bigger. It's getting out of the box and letting our kids see some kids from Buffalo, some kids from Syracuse. You know, it's just making football more exciting. You know what I'm saying? We've played, you know, these games against each other for so long. You know, the Grease teams playing each other. for years and years and years. Well, it's good for them to maybe go play somebody else. You know what I'm saying? It just makes it more, like I said, it opens up the box a little more.
You also have to go right to the beginning of the fact that they added a game. For
Yes.
the longest time, we played 7 regular season games, and then, since sectionals. Now, we can talk a little bit about going way back, and you played 9-game regular season before sectionals were around, and then when we started with sectionals, we ended up moving back to 7 games. Well, New York State in Section 5 has adopted that 8th block, which gives you a chance to travel a little bit, so we're moving in the right direction with schools, and then, of course, the tournament is possibly 3 more, and then state's 3 more. So you can possibly play 14 games now as opposed to what I believe was
13.
12.
We maxed at 13.
13.
Max at 13, but for years it was 12.
Yep.
12.
And you're right. We're trending in the right direction, but we are still very behind
yes.
the border states, the Ohio's, the Pennsylvanias, and New Jerseys, because we don't play enough games, and it doesn't help us in the recruiting of our athletes, because they're getting in 2 seasons they're getting what our kids have to take 3 seasons to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to throw a shout out too. I've got a close friend whose son is the athletic director at Chaminade High School in Florida, and his name is Matt Knight, and their team is playing in the state championship game this Saturday.
Aren't they playing?
So
Are they playing St. Thomas Aquinas?
No, in fact, they rolled Thomas Aquinas. They're a very small school, and this team is.
Is it Chaminade Madonna?
I
Called?
believe it
Yeah,
is.
they're
Yes.
really good. Yeah, they're
They
A very
are the
small
new-
school
with a lot of
Florida.
power.
And I saw Kevin today at the Y, and he mentioned that his son's team, he's the athletic director. So I want to give a shout out to Chaminade and good luck in the finals, but they're a very small school. 600 kids.
Yeah, but
Of
they
course,
are
it's the
loaded.
600 right kids, all boys and girls. And when you beat St. Thomas Aquinas, you open people's national schedule, but their class, whatever the lowest class is, enrollment-wise. So they're going to
gotta
play
be 1A.
whatever that low.
That's the
low
lowest
number
one.
is.
1A.
And getting back to we finished our season. Most teams finished their season 6 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and they're still playing the championship. But
And they started
that's
before
7
us.
weeks, and they started right. So getting back to Paul's point, 8 is nice. I think maybe getting to 9 would be nice. Regular season. Last year we had an opportunity to start. We ended up got pushed back, and instead of getting another game week 0, let's call it, or week 1, we ended up scrimmaging again. By the time we get to that point of the year, no one needs a scrimmage because everyone's done their homework at camps, summer work. For 3 years since COVID, we had 2 weeks of preseason we played, and we thought that was going to be the case this year. Instead, they added back the scrimmage week, which to me it was a step backwards. We could have thrown a game in there,
Yeah.
and
My
and
my next suggestion would be, and I've heard some coaches say this to me to my face, and I really it gets to me. But anyways, we should start football earlier. You can't play later. We can't go later because of the weather. We need to open up football, start playing it earlier, practicing, getting your scrimmage in, playing at least 1, if not 2 games before the start of school. I mean, if you want to make it bigger, then we got to go in the right direction.
And what they've done in Florida is more flexible scheduling. Football games don't always have to be on a Friday night or a Saturday. I mean, you could get you play a game on a Thursday and Wednesday, whatever, and you might be able to get another game into that regular season by just having some flexible scheduling.
George, let me ask you, I don't know if you know the answer. How many of those kids from Chaminade are playing a winter sport? And how are they impacted? I mean, that's we run into that all the time here.
I don't. It's a national level school, so those guys are.
They're playing one sport,
right? He's got 2. He told me both their tackles are going to the University of Miami.
Okay.
Well,
I said, stop right there. You don't have to say another another word as to where everybody else is going,
Yeah,
because you are serious about. They have two sports, of course. Football and spring football down there.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to that question, Dave, but
That's our kid, not our kid, a kid that's a receiver is also the point guard in basketball, and the tackle's a wrestler, and we haven't been built that way in Section 5. I don't know how you go about that, because you listen to coaches all the time. Every coach says, I want my guys to be multi-sport athletes, when in reality, I'm not sure they do.
Yeah.
I want them with them all the time.
Yeah.
So that's a battle we're fighting all the time. And then what happens is kids end up specializing, and one doesn't have to be football. They might just now become a baseball player. And I don't know if that's good. I know I'm old, but my experience was you played whatever sport was in season.
You're seeing, you talk about some of these states, and Florida is for one, where you have powerlifting teams.
Yeah,
that it really becomes a combine where you're competing against in the off season a lot of these same high schools that you would play, but colleges go to these and they evaluate, size these kids up, and see them right in those competitions.
Well, I know in Ohio they have powerlifting in Ohio is a recognized sport. They have officials. Kids there'll be a varsity and a JV team by weight class, and those kids will train, and then they'll go to another school, say on a Saturday night or Friday night, and the gym will be all set up with the weight equipment. The officials come in, they weigh them, they weigh the kids in, and then they have a competition, and they go on from there, and they have their sectionals, which down there they call regionals, and then their states, and that's a recognized. I've seen kids with patches, with weightlifting patches on.
Look, I love football. We all love football. I don't know if that's the way I want to go. Truthfully,
yeah,
I want kids to be well-rounded, to be able to do more than just football.
I think, well, first of all, we all played at a time. Football ended, basketball started on Monday.
Yeah, sure.
Basketball ended, baseball, you picked up your glove.
Yeah.
And the coaches moved along with you.
Oh yeah.
You
Oftentimes,
play for Coach Quinn, and
Whether
he
it's
would
football,
wrestling, and
baseball.
right into the next thing, right? So, and this I think will be a good segue into some of the other things we're going to talk about, is the fact that our season ended 9-0 or 8-1, and you were league champions, and you felt great. Now, all but 5 teams end their season with a loss.
Yeah.
And we've gone. They've of course won a state title, but pretty much everybody loses at the end. So you win the sectionals, but now you go to regionals and get beat. You feel like hell. It's not enough. You win regionals, you go to state semis, you lose, or you go to state finals and you lose, and it's like, at some point you got to say maybe the independents that went this year and they finished their season and they had a little league championship, maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. But I do like Paul's thought in scheduling a little differently, maybe start a week earlier, because remember, half the teams get eliminated every week as you move into weeks 9, 10, 11, 12, etc. So I think with just a few teams playing, it's wagging the dog at the beginning of the tail's wagging the dog at the beginning of the season. So, and when it's supposed to end, to Dave's point, start a little earlier, do some creative scheduling, try to jam another team in there.
Yeah.
And
improve your program.
It is what it. There's only so many months, because Florida, I just came back.
Months.
It was 70.
Yeah.
Sure.
Here, it's 28 or 21. So at some point, you're going to say, are the best teams winning? Or is it the team that's got a 250-pound fullback that's going to win everything?
Yeah.
Down there,
It's a little different.
yeah, it's a little different. So
Football's
good
hard.
stuff.
It's hard. Practice is hard. You start in the heat, you end in the cold, and if you're only playing 8 games, it's like, man, what are we doing? I'd like to see everybody play 10 games.
I would love it.
And, sure, then you move on from there. You have a few teams still
Right.
playing, but at least you expand
that's
your
a good-
schedule a little bit, and make it worth it.
And like I said, you can't go later in the year because it's just weather concern. So start a couple weeks earlier. I've said that to Section 5 coaches, and like I said, a couple of them are just like, "Are you kidding me? I'm not going to end my vacation that early." I'm like,
Well,
"Then don't coach."
yeah, then get out.
It's,
Well, the other, and I'll defend that stance is that you're a head football coach up here,
okay.
and someone's going to throw you a good salary is $5 to $7 grand, right? Down there, you know what they're making in Ohio. First of all, they don't teach. They're making six figures,
Yep. Yep.
and they got a full staff, and they're a football coach, and it's year round, and they're paid, and they're fired and hired based on how successful they are. Up here, it's, to throw another 2 weeks at a coach who makes $5 grand, it's a lot. It's a lot. I like Paul's idea the best. Start maybe a week earlier and throw 2 more games
Yeah, and
in
I
there at the
think-
beginning of the year.
I don't. What do you need? How many days do you need in between games?
5
4 days,
nights
5
rest.
days,
5 nights rest.
So you can try to, you sneak a game in after 5 nights, and you might be able to get another game or 2 into your, into that season with that. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to go. A lot of states are doing it different, and there's so many different factors. But I am all for the 3-sport athlete, and we're seeing less.
Well,
and
we're
less
all
of that.
in that category.
We see less and less of that, even 2 sports, and I think the colleges like the multi-sport athlete too.
Well, and this goes out to all the football kids, and right now the colleges, they're looking for athletes. They're looking for a kid that they can plug in multiple spots, and those type of kids, they can't get enough of. I don't think these days.
I want to give a plug to something that Dave Marine is doing. It's called New York State Elite Athletics, and they had a combine at the Total Sports, and a lot of the colleges came out again. And these kids are going one-on-one in coverage, and they're seeing these kids right there on the fields. He puts together the clinic, where they'll have coaches clinic, which is
Dave's doing a good job.
doing those kind of things, and I think those are all positives for a section. I think he has a 7-on-7 tournament that they run at the
the one at Total
so
Sports.
all that stuff is great. I think I think as coaches you got to decide what's the most value to your own team, because you can just get overwhelmed with the combines and the 7-on-7s, and you've got to pick and choose what's best for your program. And one of the things that he had mentioned to me yesterday that we were talking, because we talked about that when we look at some of these states is really just the linemen that they have, and I think what he's trying to incorporate is more of the lineman challenges, more things for the linemen to get involved in. And I think that would help us, in our own section, is the development of linemen.
Yes, that would definitely improve. One thing I did notice about Aquinas when they got into states with Lancaster, I know Lancaster, they had 12 linemen over, offensive linemen. And like I said, they only had one kid go both ways. CBA, I don't think they had any kids go both ways. They had kids in different packages. Some of their skill kids, I know that they went in some of their different packages. They played offense and defense, but for the most part, linemen do not go both ways. And that's
Well, I think, of course, a lot of it depends on the size of your school. I mean, here in Rochester, Section 5, we have what 8 teams that are in the highest
Double A,
division,
yeah.
of which you have Aquinas, McQuaid, and UPrep
Mm-hmm.
are all smaller schools that have been asked to move up because of their success. But those schools, if you look at their numbers, I think Aquinas is somewhere around 400 kids in the school.
Yeah.
McQuaid has doubled their number because it's all boys, and
Mm-hmm.
UPrep is in the same category, and they've been successful. So, I mean, there's only so many bodies running around in those schools. I mean, I'm at Irondequoit. We're in the middle of Class A numerically, and we were fortunate enough to have 7 to 12 linemen every year. But we go against teams where you look over and there's only 5 or 6 kids warming up in those positions.
Yeah.
And the schools are, in that 800 range. So when you start talking about schools and how many kids are in those buildings, now all of a sudden you've got to say, how many boys do we have and how many big boys do we have?
Yeah.
And I think Rochester is an area where the numbers are low. It's just not a lot of people in these schools. And if you look throughout the state, I mean, you start talking about Long Island.
Some bigger high schools. Yeah.
The class AA in New York State is from like 1,100 up.
Yeah.
Infinitum. It could be as high as you it can be.
3,000.
So if you get some of these schools that are unlimited numbers of kids, and you expect a school with 300 to go down there and beat them year in and year out, there's some issues.
Yeah.
I believe there's some. You go to Texas,
Oh,
what, 4,000 kids in a building, or you just hear these stories about these humongous.
Years ago, when I was down
schools.
in Ohio, I watched the Holy War, and that would be St. Ignatius and St. Ed's, 2 Catholic schools in Cleveland that are maybe 5 miles apart. And both schools, all boys, have over 5,000 kids, boys in both schools. I mean, you're talking 10,000 kids, boys. You think you can find some football players?
Werner Kleeman used to say, "The more boys you have, the more athletes you have, at least potentially to get."
Yeah.
And linemen
Yes.
come along with that. So it's a lot easier to have a school with 1,000 boys to find people than it is for a school with 500.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So a lot going on.
Yep. Anybody else got anything going on, Coach Lanny?
Well, let's hit a couple of positives
Go for it.
for Section 5, at least the ones that I can see. One is, I think within our section, by and large, now there's always exceptions, I think our coaching fraternity is pretty tight and respects each other and gets along. That doesn't mean on game days you're not getting after each other. But I think that for the most part, our coaches in Section 5 work well together.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the same page in terms of what they want for their players. I think that's a positive, something we can hang our hat on for our section.
Well, going off that a little bit with you, Coach, I'm going to go over to Coach G on this. I noticed a lot of that during Westside Camp. There's 12 teams there from Section 5, and you got them all together in the beginning every night. Got all the kids and the coaches together, and you're going over your spiel as far as whatever. But I was watching the coaches, and coaches were all, the Hilton guys were over with, the guys from Gates, and the Gates guys were, they're all interacting, and you're right. I do really like that.
Now, years ago, when I was at Fairport, we had a great rivalry with Webster at the time. They were sort of chasing us.
Yes.
We were the top dog. They were right on our heels. And we wanted to beat each other up. There's no question about it. On the other hand, I respected what Coach Bianchi was doing. I'm pretty sure he respected what I was doing at Fairport. So it could be a heated rivalry, and yet, we're all trying to get the same things accomplished.
Yeah.
And here's something now back to the Eddie Meath game. And I would tell our guys this. We play against these guys week in and week out, and we don't like them. We think they're whatever.
Yep.
Then you play in the Eddie Meath game, and all of a sudden you become pals. Yeah. You're exchanging jerseys. You're doing all
trading
this stuff.
decals.
Yeah, decals.
Oh, yeah, right. I forgot about that. Yeah, the decals.
And that's really not to be sentimental or anything, but that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
You build these lasting friendships and relationships. So,
And back then, maybe, because we didn't have it, but now I'm sure, a lot of kids are exchanging each other's Facebooks, or Instagram, or, you can get me on this, just all kinds of stuff these days, and talking to Coach Bates, I remember talking to him, his kids, he says his kids and the Aquinas kids, they get along. He's kind of a little bit taken back at how good of friends some of them have become, and but that week that they're playing ball is that week. What I'm saying, but it's good to see that they can come together. Going back a little bit now, like I said, just coming out of Ohio, and Paul, you've seen it, and George McKinley and Mass. They don't have a shot.
No, it's a whole different.
It's a whole different animal.
Well, I think part of that is the fact that they're private schools, and if you grab a kid out of my lineup, and here in Rochester, again, kids end up staying pretty much where they are. You might have one or two kids that are not happy with their school and their parents move or something like that. But when you have that wide open stuff that's going on in Buffalo,
right,
and Dave's got his quarterback, and I'm saying, hey, why don't you come over to Bishop Timon?
Recruiting, the transfers.
They don't play
all
by
that.
Section 5 rules or New York State rules. They're out on their own. They're renegades.
in
And Dave brings up a good point that the coaches here have enough respect for one another to be up front with that.
In Buffalo, they made it so they kicked the Catholics out. So
Good.
All right, good. Here we go. We're going to get on another subject, but so the Catholic coaches are like, all right, you kick us out. Guess what? I'm going to your kid's house, and they do. And it is what it is.
well, let's touch on that for Section 5. Is there much of that going on in Section 5?
As far as a Catholic,
Yeah.
all right,
You
I
need
could,
a
I
kid,
could.
you go get a kid.
I coached 17 years at Aquinas.
I coached all public school. We couldn't do that. So,
We never did that, and I'm going to tell you, there was recruiting done at Aquinas. There was recruiting.
Okay.
You know who was recruiting?
No, I don't.
The name of Aquinas. The name was recruiting. When Aquinas had the stadium and all that tradition, the name Aquinas did the recruiting. I would go to Pop Warner games. I remember going to Pop Warner games when Duran and Jameer were playing, just seeing Matt Jones watch Southwest Colts. And I go there, I have my Aquinas shirt on, and people were, the scouts are coming. The scouts are coming. They're going over to. I said, I'm watching Duran and Jameer play. They're going to Aquinas. I don't know if they're Tannenbaum or, that's where they're going to school. I just went to go watch them.
Yeah, well, if I went to watch them, they weren't coming to Fairport. I mean, so that's, there's...
That's their choice.
No, they couldn't have unless they lived in Fairport.
Well, the thing is, and I've been asked this because I've seen it as a coach at McQuaid and coaching in the public schools to see it from both sides. And I always said, people would ask about private versus publics, and are they recruiting? Are they not? And I said, you know what? I said the only one that I think has a legitimate argument, and again representing the city, was the city, where they would lose city kids to the private schools. We were losing city kids to the urban suburban, and we weren't getting the suburban kid coming into the city.
Yeah.
And urban is so big now in most of all the Monroe County schools. Now, East Rochester even has that now. When I was talking to Dennis Greco yesterday, so we lost a lot of kids in the city schools to those programs and didn't receive anything, back when we weren't getting the kids transferring into the city.
Yeah.
How about the city schools now with the charter school situation?
Well, they're another one now with the charters that are drawing. So you're dealing with private, you're dealing with urban, suburban, and charter, right? So that's hitting the public city schools, and that's why they're really down to 4 city football.
But to complement the city teams, they've done an outstanding job with their players and their coaches, and East High's been at the top of the game. Monroe obviously
UPrep
has been.
yeah.
I mean, so these coaches have done an excellent job with the kids that they have in their buildings.
Wilson won sectionals some years back, when
yep.
Morty was there.
Yep. And kids, parents, I think sometimes are the ones who are more guilty of wanting to move to greener pastures. Than so much the kids.
I've never heard the NIL in high school.
No, but I think what happens is if this stuff goes on at the collegiate level, it trickles down.
It does trickle, and I've heard people saying that they're taking their kid out of school because he's getting X amount of money from this other people at another school. I mean, it's just like, come on. I mean, don't go there.
Section 5 in New York State Public High School Athletic Association. Very, very strict rules. Right. You have to move into Fairport if you're going to play for Fairport. Yeah. And it used to be, wasn't there, Dave, a time when you moved in and you had to sit like a season or something? Yeah. Now that's, I think, kind of gone. That's I know we had athletes who moved into Greece at the time, and they put on a uniform and off they went. There was very little rules.
Right. You have to have guardianship if you are going to. You can't just say I'm living with an aunt or a cousin. Mm-hmm. There's a process to get that guardianship.
So, how are we doing? Anybody got anything else?
All right, Dave. You got a few other notes there.
I want to speak to the Independent League for a minute.
Okay.
I thought the Independents were very, very successful. It was a competitive league. They played their rivalry games. He ended with a league championship. And I don't know that that's the way we want to go with everybody being an independent, but that was, I thought, a positive for the section.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on that because I talked to a couple of coaches that played in that independent league, and they were very, very pleased. They said that their games were very well attended. They said some of those, even just to go scout, whatever, they were walking about a mile because a lot of these were more town next door to the next, to town. So it was a traditional rivalry instead of some of the travel. Yeah. They enjoyed that, and I think they are going to continue to want to go in that direction.
I do too.
Mm-hmm. Dave, let's while we're on that subject of independence, federation versus league. It's been going back and forth. Yeah. Federation's been around 5 years. Mm-hmm. I'm an MCL guy, Monroe County Athletic Association, as is Dave. Johnny, you were in it. Paul, you've been in it. City Catholic League was strong. Monroe County, I believe, was one of the best, if not the best, league in New York State back in the day when we had Fairport, Henrietta, East Rochester, those guys knocking heads with everybody, amongst others. I'm a league guy. When we took ourselves and went to federation, I believe we lost a lot of the traditional rivalries, the things that they're enjoying now in the independent league. We would like to play Monroe County in football, basketball, wrestling, baseball, with a couple of byes here and there. Mm-hmm. But Dave, of course, you grew up in East Rochester where you played football against these teams and then lined up 2 weeks later and played basketball, and you got a little, something going on. East Rochester Fairport, East Rochester Pittsford. I'm a big league guy, and I know that last year we were pretty close to going back to leagues. They're talking about it again, and that the federation could go by the way of the dodo. And there's positives and negatives as far as I'm concerned. And the negative about the federation to me was every game in sectionals was a rematch. And I think that if you went to your leagues, used your PowerPoint system that we have in place, that you could at least see somebody different in the first couple rounds of the sectionals, as opposed to time after time. Look at the AA. Aquinas played all three of those schools. Mm-hmm. Brighton played all three of their opponents. So, I don't know if I want to throw that out there, but I'm a big league guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a league guy too. I think back when we were playing. We didn't play you in the regular season, but we play in sectionals.
Right.
Well, that was okay. That's a new opponent now.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to prep for that. We had our division, then we play everybody.
Right.
Well, I'll be curious to see what that independently, what they present to the section. If the section stays federation, can they, in their classification, go a league schedule, and class AA stays with federation, or is everything going to be, the same?
Logistically, was there all league awards? Was there other things that we used to kind of take for granted? There's a patch on your jacket, Monroe County, all County, Coach of the Year, Coach's Banquet. There were a lot of things that when we went to Federation, it was like, how do we handle those things,
Well, and you bring up a point, even officials draw. I think they received a lot of the officials from the Finger Lakes organization, but they did have the rivalries, and the games were very well attended because it was traditional rivalries.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Rumor has it, too, that the New York State's going, because of the Long Island team's interest in coming in,
Yes.
that they're going to go to a AAA, which was back in the day we had AAA, which would then change all the numbers. And, we have 8 teams in AA, 17 in A, and the other ones are 5, 6, B is 5. I think they've got to start thinking about how the state's going to fluctuate their numbers. Be aligned.
Yeah, I thought the alignment of our classifications was out of whack. The A and AA were very competitive. 5 teams,
Right.
6 teams, but there were 17 teams.
In A, and there was 8. Everybody made sectionals
and
in
again,
AA.
I don't know the other state. I mean, the sections in New York State. We seem to be top heavy in the 8th.
Yes.
But some other, sections of state may not be, and they may have some of the smaller,
2 years ago, there was nobody in A up in North Country. So Section 5, it rotates around. Section 5 actually sent 2 teams to the state tournament because there are 0 teams in Class A up north.
Yes.
And you're seeing that in other sports, too.
Yeah.
I don't know, which girls soccer, maybe. You had to buy into the finals. You didn't. There were 3 teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I want to bring up, and that my understanding that a young man or young lady can play 2 sports in the same season. And are we getting many kids that are playing football and soccer in the fall?
I know there are a couple.
I mean, maybe there's some kickers. I don't know. I know we see that in the spring with girls track and flag football combined. The girls are doing both. But are we getting? What are our football numbers like? I mean, they look like they had been going down because we're getting a lot more combined programs.
I don't know of one student athlete that played dual sports. I'm sure they're out there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes you get a kid from another sport and they play a minor role in, maybe it's a kicker. I won't say minor role. Believe me, it's a he can come over for 15 minutes or 20 minutes and get his workout in and not have to worry about tackling drills and things of that sort.
I don't just know because we've added on to the 8-man team. We're getting more and more of that. We're getting more and more of combined programs. I mean, who would have thought Cal Mum and Leroy?
Never. I have that. It's Channel 13 archive. Talks about high school. Remember the one that I showed you? And there was one little episode with Cal Mum Leroy. And I got to show Mike this sometime. Cal Mum beat Leroy in the sectional finals up at the U of R. I want to say it was 97. And at the end, they interviewed Mike, and he was saying something about Mom, and he goes, well, you know what might happen? Could you ever think of Cal Mum and Leroy combining? Then what would happen? And that was like 20-something years ago. And, I mean, for him just to say something like that back then, and now here we are, they just got done with their first year together and actually lost in the finals.
Right.
So,
right, we don't know, what the future lies, but, we're seeing a direction that things are going, I guess.
yes. There's some good things. And like I said, the big one I had was the Eddie Meath game. It's just, again, if there's anything I can do, I'm sure if there's anything any of us can do, helping out as far as giving it publicity, whatever it takes. That's something that Dick Cerrone started up. Dick did a lot of things. He started up a lot of things, and I really, really enjoyed that. I'm sure we all did. That time of year.
Just to talk about another positive, and Pete McCabe brought this up when he was here when we interviewed, football official Pete McCabe, who's also a lacrosse official. And one of the things he was talking about was that due to the lacrosse rules, they were going to put up those second clocks.
Yeah, the shot clocks.
Shot clocks. And to have that, and now, next year at all of our football fields will be an advantage to all the teams, because not every school had those. Some had them, some did not. Some, were the delays, they're watching the official.
I think Hilton didn't have it.
And to have all the fields, basically.
Uniform.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that is a plus.
And another thing I'd like to commend Section 5 on, which a couple years ago, we went to go watch Aquinas McCoy play their sectional finals at Hilton. And I'm old school, much like you guys. Having it at my love is the U of R. I love games at the U of R. And for whatever reason, I know sometimes we can't have games there or whatever. Fisher was the second one. Having the sectional finals, other than at a high school, it's got to be a must. You know what I'm saying? I know, Syracuse, they have the dome, and Buffalo's got Highmark. We don't have anything near like that around here, but at least get it to some place where I don't mind Brockport, even though it's kind of out in no man's land. But I sure like the U of R. And like I said, I liked Fisher too. That just made it a little more special. And again, we're always talking about the kids. I mean, how much more would it cost to go to the U of R, or would it go to Fisher? You know what I'm saying? Other than Brockport. I'm just throwing that out there. Coaches?
There's a lot of information thrown out from a bunch of guys that have been around for a while.
Yeah, I mean, we've been around the block a couple times, and some of us were together, some of us were against each other.
Absolutely against.
He still hates
There was
Olympia.
no fraternity back then. It was dog.
It was a
No, but that's it's some great topics for discussion, and we'll continue.
Where do we go from here, John? I know you're the host with the most, and
that's why they call me the most.
Do we? Is there maybe in the future a Keeping It Real All-Star team?
Yes, we've talked about that.
Oh, I must have missed that episode.
You did.
Or that
You were
part of
in
the episode.
Florida,
I fell
like
asleep
tanning.
at that point.
You was tanning.
Yep.
He's drinking a Coca-Cola.
I'm sure you're
going to
talk. I'm sure you're going to talk about that as we wind up the session.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, that is coming up next.
Because I have them on my list, the number of kids, the names of the kids that I would like to talk about.
First things first, we're calling it the Super 24. It's the Keeping It Real
Okay.
Super 24. Everybody, all of us remember the Super 22. We just added a punter.
Union had that.
We added a punter and a kicker. I reached out to James Johnson yesterday, and he's going to gather up some of his information and get it back out to me. He wasn't really sure yet when the All Green of Rochester was coming out. But if I hear anything about that, we'll throw it out and let people know about that. A lot of those kids will probably be on ours. Also, one thing I forgot about the Super 24 is we're also going to have, and this is something you guys don't know about, so you got to start thinking, is Coach of the Year. Mm-hmm. And it's just not not AA, one coach. And I already picked my coach out. I already know. I already know who I got. This guy, I mean, for what they've done in the last.
Well, you needn't share yet.
Right.
I'd love to, but
don't
let the cat out of the bag.
Exactly.
Don't let the cat out of the bag.
It's some suspension.
A little bit
One coach.
One coach, and I got. And you know what? If I said his name, all you guys.
No, don't go. Yeah.
All you guys would
first
agree.
of all, it's a man. He just said,
How many female head coaches?
I know of at least not head coaches, but I've got maybe a few assistant. How about an assistant coach?
No,
or a coaching staff of the year, Dave.
Position coach of the year.
Position coach.
I like
you
coaching
guys want to do that?
staff
You can do
of
that.
the year. What do you think, Paul?
Well, that all goes under that same umbrella. You know.
Well,
with that,
I just if a
What
guy
about
is
an
that
all-star
great,
coaching staff? You have a head coach and the top line coach. Never mind.
Hold it. When I started this
John's
or
got this.
started thinking about this
I'm getting
all-star
hungry.
team, I wanted to go 44. And
Somebody said
one
that's too
guy
much.
yeah.
said it was too much, and you're watering.
Why don't we
it
give
down.
everybody a trophy, John?
Yeah, I got you. So that's why we went to 24.
Tiara on
That's why we went.
everybody's head.
Now,
Who's the tailback going to be? Who's the fullback going to be? Who's the right
I already
tackle?
know. I already know.
Right, Dave?
How do you already know?
I know who I
we,
want.
We don't have any
You're
input.
going to vote. It's all voting. It's all
Vote?
voting.
Oh, all right.
I got my. You're going to have yours.
I
Everybody's going to have a
list.
vote.
I've already done some homework.
Yeah, I did too.
Who's your quarterback?
Not releasing the information.
No.
I thought we were doing it Christmas Day or something. It, was,
I'm
We're
not
having
going to be
the-
here that day.
The large school is going to be coming out.
it will drop on that day.
That's a great word.
Okay,
drop.
drop,
That
okay.
White drop.
That's a meeting,
Nice.
I had a 6-year-old do that the other day in the hallway. He looked at me, went, and walked away. That was awesome.
Cool.
That the large school is going to be out, dropped on Christmas Day, 9 a.m.
Look forward to that.
The smaller schools, we're going to do a small school one too, with help with Coach Bill Devitt.
Okay. Bill's good.
He's
man.
going to help us with that, and that's going to come out New Year's Day
Oh,
at 9 a.m. So those are things that are coming down. As far as our little roundtable stuff, I really haven't talked to you three about it. I was thinking about doing it like once a day.
Once a day.
will you feed us?
How about
For
who?
goodness sake.
Are there
I'm here.
pizzelles?
No, she's actually my sister is stepping in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
She's Italian.
All right. That's fine.
What do you want?
But I haven't seen any. That's
Okay.
all I'm
It's
saying.
in the process.
Okay.
Jews, my God,
right.
my God. All right, let's go back to our channels, or not sponsors. How you can find us? Yeah, we're on YouTube. You can get us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and I am still working on. I promise. I got like 3 out right now. I'm going to get some more out hopefully this week on TikTok.
Excellent.
And I know, Coach, I know you're a huge.
Waiting.
He's a big TikTok guy.
Huge TikTok.
Humongous Ticky.
He's got 6 followers, I believe. Somewhere in there.
Thought he had 7.5.
don't
3
have that
sons and maybe somebody else.
Stick to the facts.
Facts only.
Facts only.
So we got the holidays coming up in a
Yes.
couple
Looking
weeks.
forward to
Enjoy
it.
the holidays.
You know,
Enjoy
there's a
it.
lot of eating going to be going. You know, we got to talk more about food. I think
I'm
Oh,
vegan,
our
so I
next,
can't.
You're-
our next podcast.
we'll be
Yeah, maybe
food.
about food.
Keeping it real.
Right, the holiday. What foods we enjoyed over the holidays?
All right. It's a good
and that.
good start.
And I think we look forward to 2025 again. I think we we're going to continue with some of the interviews with coaches in the area, officials in the area, contributors to the football to Section 5, and those are always interesting, and we learn a lot.
One of my goals in the off season when we go through February, March, April, I would like to get like Mo Jackson, the AA coach, and then Coach Leam,
Oh, some of the sectional champion
the Class A
coaches
coach.
and
Yep. What it took to get to that level.
You know what I mean? Just what type of year they had and everything. And
Excellent.
Yep, that would be great.
get in touch with those guys and try to find some times. I also have. I just found out. I was talking to Paul about this. This goes back a little bit, and I just found out like a week ago. His wife works up at the same school I do, and we talked about it as having Tony Jordan on. Remember us talking about that?
Absolutely. You know, we have a lot of the where are they now? And you know, Tony was a great athlete at East High, played at Kansas State, played in the NFL with the Cardinals and the Cowboys.
Yeah, and I think the Saints.
And coach football with Section
Yes.
5 too. So you know, to hear what he's been up to and talk about some of his high school and college days.
Yes, he'd be a great guy to have. I'm really excited about getting him on. Like I said, I just found out about like a week ago. His wife works up at the same school I do, so we kind of
Well, we got a lot to look forward to in 2020.
Yes, we do. X-Dog, got anything?
That's it for me.
Paul,
All
Dave,
set.
all set.
We're all set.
All right, we're gonna do it now. Hopefully, you remember. Come on now.
Remember, it's on
Remember,
your.
it's on the shirt. If you have
No, just read the shirt.
got it.
Got it.
I think
Okay,
so.
here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Keep it real, Section 5 football.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
If I drown, would you pull me back to you? If I drown in your poison.